Hello and welcome to the 2020.3 Engage feature release presentation. I'm Dan Taylor, Customer Success Director at BlueVenn. So in this session we'll be going through some of the key features for this latest release of Engage that's just gone live. The main features we'll be looking at today will be some security enhancements for user authentication, password resets, looking into some more advanced analysis options such as single record selects, and moving into some of the big features for this release which are really enhancing the campaigning options, so including voucher codes as an option now, as well as a big addition to dynamic creatives within the tool. So the first feature we're going to look at is the Logon Location Authorization tool. Now this is a new security enhancement for Engage, which effectively means users have to authenticate the IP address they'll be using to access the Engage system. This authentication is managed through email sent from the platform, just to make sure that users do authenticate with the right email address. These are managed within the server config tool, which you'll need to contact your system administrator for. To get these enabled, it's a simple action of ticking the machine ID inclusion tick box. Once this has been enabled, this means all users going forwards will have to authenticate before they can access their system. The first time on logging in, you'll be prompted with an authorization attempt, which will automatically prompt an email address to be sent to your account. Once the email has been received in your account, you will see the logon attempt has been made to your IP address with a unique code that you'll have to use. To authenticate, you'll have to copy that code, which is only valid for 10 minutes, into the Engage platform, which will then confirm that your login attempt for this IP is linked to your account. This only needs to be done once per IP address. Once that has been confirmed, you will then be able to log into your account going forwards without any need for further intervention. The second security enhancement we've added to this release is the option of password expiration. This feature is managed again within the server config tool within the platform. Effectively, this allows the system administrator to configure a default duration when a password will be valid for, including any options for how often the user will be reminded of this password expiration. All managed within the software tool, this will be universal for all users, just to prompt them to reset the password when required. Okay, so the next feature we're going to look at for Engage is a feature that will be familiar to older Blue Analyzer users, which is a much welcomed addition to Engage, and that is a single record selection. Now what this feature allows you to do is take a single record and isolate it from the rest of your query to be able to look into this customer a little bit more, find out more about this one record without needing to take the rest of the data with it. So if we were to take, for example, our Gold Loyal customers from the database, we might want to cherry pick a few customers from this to see actually do their transactions really tie up to make them worthy of a Gold customer. Now, historically, if we wanted to look at David Hitman, for example, and find out more about this customer and what makes him Gold, we would have to query his key, and the whole process is a bit more cumbersome. With the new feature, what we can do is simply click on this user, and we can see the lozenge at the top is now updated to select this one record. We can also, if we wanted to, hold Control and select multiple records, and you can see these all get grouped together. Now, if we were to take this one record, for example, we can right-click on the new lozenge and we can push this through into either a tag, a then, a selection, or we can simply drag this out into the workspace below, and this will create a new selection of just this one record. What this allows us to do now is we can now use our table steps to say we don't want to view David as an individual, but we want to view all of the orders he's made to decide if he's actually worthy of being a Gold customer. So using our table dropdown, we can change to, in this case, the order table. So now instead of just viewing David as an individual, we are looking at all of the orders that are placed that link within David's account. So if we go to our data, we could select our order table and we could start to view any information on this. So if we were to take the order date, the total value, the number of items that have been purchased. And again, these are all looking at David as an individual rather than just all of the customer's data. So looking at this, we can see he's made 7 purchases over quite a worthwhile total order value with several numbers within. We could also take some information for David specifically. So if we wanted to look at his lifetime spend, because this is coming from David's data, we can just drag in some individual data here and just make sure this is all related to David. So we can see of all of his transactions, he has a lifetime spend of 1,700, which accumulates into these transactions here. So the single record selection option is a really good way of being able to isolate a set of data and explore just that one record without having to isolate data, find their ID, set a new query. So this process is a lot easier and cleaner in just finding out a little bit more and micro-analyzing our data here. Now, one thing that's really important to remember with the size selection tool is when you're querying data, this is taking a sample of the data. So we're taking, in this case, one individual with an offset of 1. So if we were to go back to our original query and find our gold customers here, it's taking our original selection, displacing it by 1 and selecting the data. Now, if we were to take another record, Teresa, for example, we can see here the criteria is taking 1 record, but we're taking the 7th. Now, why this is important is if our data were to change for any reason, let's say we have a GDPR complaint and 2 of these customers get deleted from the database. The next time our system refreshes, let's say Grace and Betsy here have been removed, which means David now becomes the 3rd record. Why this is important is your size samples should not be used for any campaigning. The reason for this is if a record gets removed from the database and you run that query the next day, you're not going to have potentially the same data that you think you will. Really important to remember this. So if you are saving your size selections, if we were to save David here, for example, if David were to be removed, we wouldn't be selecting David and his transactions anymore. We'd be selecting someone else. So for campaigning, you have to make sure your queries are always predictable and follow set syntax. So just to reiterate, these are useful for analyzing your data, but should not be used for any saved or campaigning selections. The next area we're going to look at within Engage is the addition of voucher codes within the tool. This will allow you to build and generate or import your own voucher codes into the solution to be included within campaigns. So these are found within the campaign area of Engage, where we can look to create our voucher code sets. For voucher code sets, there are 2 kinds of voucher codes available, and that will depend on where they come from. Either using your own generated codes from an external system, which can be loaded in, or actually using Engage to generate our own codes. So we're going to start by just looking at creating our own codes within Engage using internal generation. With the options available, we can specify how many codes we're going to create. In this case, we will generate 20,000 new unique voucher codes. We can also assign a warning threshold, which will give us a notification after a certain amount of campaigns remain. So if we have used too many, we'll need to either add new ones into the system or have those generated within the tool. So we could set our threshold to when there are 1,000 left. The exceeding behavior will specify what will happen in a campaign if we do run out of voucher codes. The options for this are either failing the communication step outright and leaving all steps pending. This would be to make sure if we wanted all customers within this communication to receive a voucher, we'll stop all of them. The other option would be to fail just the individuals who didn't make the cut or we ran out of codes before they were to be added into a campaign. So with the options here for internal generation, all we need to do is add in these options here. We can save our voucher code, which will be our internal generation. And once saved, we can go ahead in the menu and generate our codes. So what is happening behind the scenes? The tool is generating a unique 52 character code, which can be used to link into an external system, upload to a voucher code system, or using a third-party tool, link these in as a lookup key so we can assign a value to those. The other option, if we didn't want to use a generic code and we actually wanted to import our own voucher codes generated from a third-party system or a financing system, we can do the same process again. We'll select our voucher code set, and this time we're going to link it to a file of data that has been added to our Engage server. So we'll select the text file as our provider. Again, we have the option of setting a warning threshold. So we'll set this again to maybe 20 when we run out of codes on this one. Instead of then generating how many codes we want to build, we'll specify the file path. Now this will be the location the file can be found, which will be local to your Engage server as mentioned. We have the same options for if we want records to fail the step altogether if we run out of codes, or if we just want to not send an email to individuals once we've run out of codes there. The other options, because we've specified a text file now rather than generating codes, is the option of the file format. So using standard features, a file separator, field enclosure if needed, and a line terminator. Once we have that data, we can select preview, which is going to link to our file, and we can see here we actually have vouchers generated for our BlueVenn Beast promotion codes. So these could be vouchers to send an offer to receive a free BlueVenn Beast on the house. So once we've set up the data as needed, we can go ahead and save this voucher code as well. This time we'll call this our external generated vouchers. And once done, we can go ahead and we'll generate these as well. So that's actually taking the voucher from the file and loading those within Engage's system. You'll notice as well on both of our vouchers, we have states against each voucher code. Now what this means, and what is very important to remember, each of these codes is unique. So once that code has been used, it can't be made available for another customer to be assigned that code as well. So whenever a code is assigned to a customer through a campaign, that state will change from available to allocated. And you can see from the display list here, we have the option to view all of our available codes left over, or if any have been allocated, we can see those on the drop down as well. You'll also have a percentage at the top to tell you of your codes how many have been used within a campaign so far. So now we have the voucher codes generated from our external file. We're able to add these into a campaign to be able to distribute these to our customers. We do have a campaign already set up, however this doesn't have any of our codes assigned. So we're going to now add our voucher codes to this campaign to be able to include those. So here we have a simple campaign sending an email to all of our customers within the last week. We're going to send them an output, in this case just a text output. And then if they have been assigned a voucher, they'll be tagged and exit, otherwise they will just exit the campaign. You'll see to assign these, we have a new option within the communication settings on the right hand side. And this is the ability to include our promo and voucher sets here. All we need to do to include our voucher codes within the campaign is to select from the voucher code set, where we can see both our external campaign vouchers and our internal vouchers that we generated ourselves. So what we'll do is assign the external vouchers, we'll save our campaign, we'll go ahead and run this. So we're going to output our data. As the records move through the communication step, they're going to be assigned a voucher code until there are none left to use. Now, as I said, there's only 99 voucher codes available within our campaign. So we can see of our 2,321 customers for this week, those have used up the 99 vouchers straight away. Those have been tagged and exit, and the remaining customers have gone through our failure step. The reason those have failed, again, is because we set within our externally generated vouchers, if the customers exceed the number of vouchers available, any customers who are not allocated a code will need to exit. Now again, when we refresh these, this will then update with our available data. So as we refresh this, We can see all of our codes have been used now, 100%. We went too quickly to receive the warning because we assigned them all at once, and we can see all of our voucher codes have now been allocated, so we'll not be able to get added to another customer until we either add more vouchers to the file or generate more internally. So the next feature we're going to look at is the addition to our creative builders and the ability to now add dynamic content. So within our campaigns, we have a creative ready to go, which is our 2020.3 announcement. Now at the moment, this is a static campaign. There's no dynamic content available to offer. This is using a bit of variables for the individual's first name and a tag for their customer type as well. Now what we'll be looking to do is extend this so we can add dynamic offers underneath this depending on the customer's type, changing the banner here as well to reflect the customer's level, whether they're gold, silver or bronze, and be able to just add a lot more personalization to this campaign. Now this feature in itself relies on a few different new components we've added to the tool, and that is the HTML components within the creative builders, the priority matrix, which we can use to determine of the different offers available, which is the best to assign to a customer, and wrapping that all up into the creative tool here to be able to display our dynamic content. So before we can start plugging in our variable content to decide what value should be assigned to a customer based on their attributes, the first thing we need to do is actually create the content variables that can be used to load into our creative. These are done using the campaigns area where we'll be able to add in our new HTML content. So this is done on the campaigns area, and scrolling down we have the option here to select HTML components. Now these are used to decide what content will be loaded based on our different variables. Quite a straightforward interface. This uses raw HTML, which we will use to load into our campaign. So you have the HTML editor here where we're able to start typing in our content. So if we wanted to add in a body, we could add in a div tag followed by a paragraph where we could start to load in different content for different variables. So this could be a different examples here. Now quite a straightforward example of HTML. The better uses of this are actually with some components we built earlier, which we'll run through in a moment. The areas which are important to cover on the HTML component are these radio toggles here for classic campaigning or triggered campaigning. Now the difference between these, if you're using a conventional creative like we have, which will be sending through a normal engaged campaign, we would need to use classic campaigning. However, if we were building any creatives which get driven off API calls using any of the real-time customer journeys, then we'd need to select trigger instead. So to show some examples of HTML components that we will need for our campaign, we have a few variables available. We have our landing page links, which are the copies of our announcements. So we can see here we have our generic more info, which is just a URL to our image, which we can see from the preview is the same as we had before. So we've created several versions of these, each with the different customer statuses. So we have a silver view for silver customers, we have a gold banner for gold customers, and a bronze banner for bronze customers, and our generic. So using these four options, we're able to determine, depending on the customer value, which of these four they'll receive. So with the HTML components built, the next thing we need to build is our controller. So we can determine what customer attribute will determine which of those four banners they'll receive. Now that's done using our HTML dynamic components here. But the first thing we need to do is build an object to determine what values will be mapped. So what we're going to do next is go to build a new object. This will be for our campaigns, and this will use our new component, the dynamic content mapper. Within the dynamic content mapper, the first thing we need to choose is our source. Now at this stage we have the option of either a priority matrix, which we'll cover in a moment, or actually choosing a discrete value from our ADS, our analytical data store, to determine which value or which column within our data will determine the values customers will see. So we can see we have our marketing customer type here, which when we select, this is pulling in those discrete values from our database. Very much the same as if we were to select that data from our database here. We can see those values available. Within our variables, we have the option to then choose which object we're going to map this value to. Now these are determined by the objects we'd created earlier. So what we're going to simply do is navigate through our campaign folders. And if a customer either has a no match or a default mapping, they'll receive our generic values here. Same for a default mapping as well. Now, instead of navigating through to find these, we can actually type in and find these values here just to speed up the process a little more. So here we'll find our gold variables. Here we'll add our silver variables, and finally our bronze variable as well. So now we've created our placeholder, which will effectively, whenever a campaign runs, look at each customer's value from the field, and depending on the value it finds, that will determine which content gets mapped into that campaign. So once built, we can go ahead and save this, and this will be our hero image dynamic mapping. And we'll save this within our landing page links. So once we've created our dynamic content, we can now load this into our creative to map into our campaign. So on the right hand side, we'll select our dynamic content. We'll drag this into the area we want the option to be visible. And on clicking on this option, we now have the ability here to choose our dynamic content. So what we can select on this drop down here, it will give us the option of all of our dynamic content mappers that we may have created. So we'll navigate to our hero image dynamic mapping, where we have the ability here to select which mapped value we would like. Now with an ADS mapping, you'll only have typically one value per customer, so you'll only have the one mapped value. If you're doing a priority matrix, which we'll come on to shortly, one customer may actually link to multiple different offers available, so you may have different mapped variables available here. As we're just using the ADS data for now, we'll go ahead and we'll select OK. So we can see from our campaign, we've now loaded in a dynamic placeholder. Depending on the customer attribute, when the campaign sends, it will take their individual first name here. We've actually chosen to include their customer type in the description as well. Now what this will do when the campaign runs and gets sent against each person, these variables are then going to be loaded into the creative per person, and it's also going to then map in the HTML object depending on the value for this customer. While we have a series of links that we've added for finding out more information, we also have a variety of offers that we want to include in our campaign as well. These will be the offers that we can see in our folder here, which contain a variety of different promotions. These range from our BlueVenn Beast introduction, where we're taking a offer for our BlueVenn Beast, with a variety of following up offers as well, such as 10% off, 20% off, and free postage packaging. Now these could be a variety of different offers for different third parties or different partners you work with. So a customer may only be eligible for one, two, or maybe all of the offers. So the next thing we need to work out is, of these promotions available, how do we prioritize which offer a customer receives? Now this can be quite difficult when you're just using a set of static data, such as the more info offers. So what we need to do next is add a matrix where we can decide a variety of different offers and how those could be eligible for a customer. Now these are done using the next feature available with this release, which is the priority matrix. The priority matrix core use is to be able to assign a series of different customers alongside a variety of different promotions or offers available to determine within that grid what offers should be prioritized for which customer types. To create a new priority matrix, you go to your analysis, select new, and you'll see we have the option here to create a new priority matrix. On creating a new matrix, the first options available naturally are to set the table level we're building this on and the maximum number of priorities, so the number of offers we have available. So we can select 4 offers for our priorities here. The queries we have here are split up into criteria and segments. The segments control the columns at the top, which control our customer groups. So we could call this Group A, Group B, and Group C. The criteria down the left-hand side, these are our offers which we're going to be introducing to our customers. So by double-clicking on the name here, we're able to name these as Offer A, Offer B, and Offer C. You can see within the grids here, all of these are currently at 0. Now these numbers here reflect the priority we want depending on each of our groups. So in our example, if Offer A was the most important promotion for Group A, this would have a priority of 1. However, it might not be an offer that's very relevant to Group C. So we might say this has a priority of 4. For Group B, it's in the middle, so priority 2. Using this adjustment, we're able to set priorities across all of our offers for each of our customer groups, depending on the severity of the promotion. So if it's very relevant to this customer group or if it's not. Now these have no real bearing on the system aside from if a customer matches to multiple offers, this will be the order of priority they have. To make this offer relevant for our BlueVenn Beast promotion, we actually have a priority matrix we've set up already with the offers in mind. So this is looking at our customers based on, in this case, their occupation, so the industries they work in. So here we can see we have our different customer groups here. Where other is taking everything, as well as the different variables we want to determine which offer is relevant for our customers. And we can see by looking at the volumes here, each of these segment counts here reflects how many customers are falling into each pot. With the customer segments here, they work in order from left to right, so the ordering is important. So if a customer falls into this pot first, this is the column they will be prioritized against. However, all of the customers that don't match our criteria will then be free to fall into our subsequent groups. So we're able to assign different customer types, demographics, whatever our segmentation may be, to determine different priorities for different customer types. Once we've specified the customer types, we have our 4 offers at the bottom here, each with a varying level of which offers are important to our customers. So we can see here we have our first offer, which is an introduction to the BlueVenn Beast, which we will map into our introduction here. We want this to be available for all of our customers. So we've set this to a priority of 1 across the board. For the other offers available, we've then said we want to leave this up to the priority to determine which offers are important to which customers. So for someone in education, IT or finance, we've decided that free post and packaging for them will be the second most important offer above any discounts. Whereas someone who works in marketing or retail, we've determined these customers would receive 10% off as our next preferred option. Now, if there's anybody in this group who doesn't quantify for the offer for 10% off, whatever your criteria may be, they would then default to offer 3 if they match the criteria for this, or if they don't match either of these, then they would potentially be available for offer 4. So these priorities aren't just a quick way of saying, yep, you will receive this. There's a hierarchy for if they don't actually match this criteria, they can move on. So what we're looking to do across all of our customers here is find the next best offer available. Once we've saved our offers like so, we're then able to build our priority matrix. Now, depending on the size of your customer base and the number of offers available, this can take a number of minutes, so worth running these separately. The ordering of the actual offers isn't as important, so we can, holding the 3 dots here, reorganize these offers if we want to. Now, the order of the offers does not matter. We can see it's the priority here, which is still determining which is the most important for them. However, the priority of these offers here very much does matter. So where you have the columns here, in this case, everyone would fall into other, so no one would fall into these other priorities. So it is worthwhile being careful of where your segments are based for your columns, but the rows can just fall in any order. That could be alphabetical, could be numerical, could be in order of preference. So now we have our matrix built and we can save this. Behind the scenes, what that's doing is calculating against each person and determining which values they'll be available. Now, this does include some new syntax we can use to find out what those priorities are. So we can see we actually have 2 columns we've added here, which are expressions built in our system. Now, these actually introduce a new type of field variable which you can load into your criteria. The syntax for this will be the name of the model we've built. So in our case, this is called Marketing Priority Matrix. So we take the name here, and then we're able to select from priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. What this will do is, against each customer base, this will pull out what the values are for that priority. If we were to take our gold customers as a selection, we could include these columns as a sense check to see, of these customers, what are their priorities for 1 and 2. So in refreshing this, and we can see for each of our customers here, we now have values for their priority 1 and priority 2, where those offers are available. Now you'll notice as well, we also have some customers who don't actually have a second priority offer, and that's where it can be important to make sure you have either an other option or a generic value these customers can map to. In our case, we just have a blank HTML object. So if there are any customers that only have 1 priority, then they'll just receive a blank created for the second. So now we've built our priority, we have our offers available to map into those different scenarios. We now want to do the same again and build a dynamic content mapper. Now this time, instead of pulling a set of data from the ADS, we're going to load in our priority matrix. So we'll go to our campaign, we'll select new, we'll select a new dynamic content mapper, where this time, instead of selecting our training 2020, we're going to search for our matrix, which was our marketing priority matrix. So in selecting this, this gives us the 4 offers we had available, as well as a default mapping for those that don't fall into any of these groups. So we can go ahead and select from our folders with our offers, the different offers available. So we have our Beast intro, and again, we should have our free postage and packaging. We had an offer for 10%, 20%, and our blank. So very similar to our gold, silver, bronze customers, we've effectively taken all of our different variables from our priority matrix and split these in. So we'll save this now as our offer matrix. For our BlueVenn Beast. So now we have our second dynamic content mapping available. We can now add this also to our creative. So now we have our content available. Just like before, we can select a dynamic content block and use this to load in our dynamic content values. As this is a new block, we'll need to reselect our dynamic content, where we can go in and select our Beast offer matrix. Once we've selected our content, instead of having multiple values to choose from, like our gold, silver, bronze selection, we actually have each of our 4 different priority values available now. So this is where we can start to map in where each of our different content blocks will sit based on our offers available. So we'll choose our mapped value 1 and select OK. Once we've added this, we'll go back to our content, we'll add in our second one, and this is where we can now say, based on our priority matrix again, we'll now select their second priority value. Now this could continue all the way up to offer 3, 4, however many different promotions you may have. Now, with our settings again, we specified if a customer has a mapped value, that will go in for the first view. However, if a customer has no priority offers available, it will default to the blank HTML. So this means a customer won't just have lots of unnecessary or irrelevant offers, and it will only populate with our personalized values. Now the creative has been saved, we're able to finalize this and load it into a campaign to test a send. So loading our 20.3 announcement, we have a simple audience just with my data for now, so we can send this to myself to test the variable values. That's going to feed directly into a communication step where we've set up our BlueVenn email channel. We've assigned our subject line. We've also included dynamic variables within the subject header here to make the content feel a little bit more personalized again. We've linked our 20.3 announcement creative, and once that's been sent, that will then flow through into an exit step. So we'll go ahead and we'll send this email, get the final confirmation there, and then we'll send this out and view the content. And we're just going to fast forward the run of this campaign now. All in, it took 30 seconds in total for those records, most of which is personalizing the dynamic content. So while those campaigns are sending, we're going to flip over to our email tool now, where we can start to see those emails feed through. Again, as we see that 30-second gap while the campaigns are sending, we can actually see those campaigns feed in with each of our 3 different creatives for Annabelle, Henry, and Gregory here, each with their personalization. So as we can see for Annabelle, she's being flagged as a gold customer, where following the priorities we had, she's received campaign 1 with free postage and packaging. Henry here is silver, also receives offer 1 with a 10% promotion. And Gregory, as the last, is our bronze customer here, who, as we can see, receives the priority 1 offer of the Beast and actually receives 20% off himself, with all 3 receiving different creatives from the same campaign. So this summarizes some of the key features for Engage 2020.3. If you have any questions on anything you've seen in this webinar or any queries that you'd like to explore further, get in touch with your customer success manager, project manager, or account manager. Alternatively, if you send an email to support@bluevenn.com if you'd like to arrange to have your solution upgraded. Thanks again, and we'll speak soon.